Okay, guys, well, they should have just left Jurassic Park well enough alone, but they didn't. And so on this episode of Rotten Reviews, I'm going to talk about the 2015 film Jurassic World. It has a 72% on the tomato meter and a 78% on the audience score. It has a whopping 225,368 audience reviews as of January 1, 2020, as of today. And so I just can't help myself. I watched this for the first time in the last couple of hours, and I just cannot help myself. I have to be contrarian here. I have to go against the grain, and I have to say that I do not agree with that 78% audience score. In my opinion, this film really should be rotten. I say it should just be under 60%, just enough to make it rotten. If I had my way, it would be. However, obviously, the popcorn munching crowds out there, they'll pay for almost anything that has like semi-decent, really expensive CGI in it. And we see the same phenomena going on with the Transformers franchise. You have endless rotten Transformer films out there, each with huge amounts of great-looking CGI, and they are certainly rotten in my opinion. And, well, they just keep cranking them out, and people keep paying millions and millions of dollars in ticket sales to see them. And it's the same thing going on here. Apparently, there's just enough people that want to see gigantic dinosaurs just battle each other. Forget about story, forget about logic, forget about anything rational that you would judge a film for. They're just judging this because they just can't get enough of giant dinosaurs just beating each other up. And in this film, you get exactly that. In fact, you get a T-Rex and a genetically modified giant T-Rex just fighting each other. And it's supposed to be so exciting, and I'm sorry, it's just not. It's not exciting at all. It's just a whole lot of money put into CGI. You've got Chris Pratt, and he is playing a very, very paper-thin cardboard character. You don't know anything about him, who he is. He just goes through the motions. His acting is completely shit, in my opinion. He should have stuck to being Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, because he's doing an Academy Award-winning performance as Star-Lord compared to what he's doing in this film. And from what I've been told, what he does in the sequel to this film. And you also have Bryce Dallas Howard, who not only is also a very paper-thin and cardboard cutout character, but she's also very unlikable and completely incompetent in her movie role, in her job in this film. It doesn't work. In fact, I was rooting for her to die. I was rooting for Chris Pratt to probably die, and I was rooting for Bryce Dallas Howard's character to be destroyed, be just chomped in half like some henchman would be by one of these giant dinosaurs. But it's not going to happen, of course. She has to survive. She has to be the action hero, heroine, and she has to make it to the end, unfortunately. But I went through this entire film hoping that the good guys would die. And we have a couple of kid characters in this who are also very paper-thin and cliched and very annoying and unlikable as well. You have a motor mouth kid and his older brother who's kind of a pouting teenager type, and they're completely stupid and unlikable, and I was kind of hoping they would die, but of course I knew they wouldn't. They had to survive to the end as well, and it's so ridiculous. I comprised a big list of plot holes on this one because I'm just going to have a section in this rotten review in which I just go through the plot holes because they're so stupid, and that's why I judge this film as being quite competently made for, say, a 9-year-old audience. But if you're older than 9 years old, there's nothing to see here. It's just mindless CGI dinosaurs, and it doesn't matter if the dinosaurs look cool or not. In my opinion, they looked like any other CGI animal. But people just want to see them fight, and my God, they're just in love with dinosaurs, I guess. Now, in this film, just to make the plot really simple, it's kind of like a continuation of the first 3 Jurassic Park movies, or maybe a continuation of the first Jurassic Park movie, in that this Jurassic World is like a new and improved Jurassic Park built on the same island as the old Jurassic Park. And this one's just got genetically modified dinosaurs, because apparently the public decided that they just weren't excited by dinosaurs anymore, the regular kind. So they went ahead and just created like hybrid dinosaurs, custom made to be scarier and more dramatic looking and edgier, I guess, for the public consumption. And it's just like a giant Disney World full of CGI dinosaurs. And it very much reminded me of a very corporate, shallow Disney World, but with the dinosaurs, and the whole thing's just illogical. But let's get into the audience reviews before I get sidetracked too much on this, and take a look at one from right at the top from 2 days ago. 3.5 stars, not bad. At least this movie has potential, but plot can be improved. Well, that's the only above 3-star review that I'm going to read. I am going to read nothing but 3-star and below reviews for the remainder of this Rotten Review episode. So just enjoy that last one there. And yeah, I'll agree, but that's understating it, that the plot can be improved. The plot is complete shit. It's full of holes like Swiss cheese, and it's just really bad. If I have to give this a star rating, I'm going to stick with 1 star. I think this is worth 1 star because a movie was made and people got paid, and CGI, the CGI artists got practiced, so that they can actually use their talents on a worthy film in the future. Because this, yeah, just chalk it up as practice, because there's nothing redeemable here other than, the artists got to practice their craft. So that's a plus. In any case, let's move on. 0.5 star from 6 days ago. This movie made absolutely no sense, not scientifically, logically, or as a movie. If you have a gun, use it on the dinosaurs. They're just animals. In the old movies, the victims never had weapons when they needed them. I agree on this. In this movie, there aren't really any firearms in Jurassic World, and that's another major plot hole. I mean, at one part in this, it is said by the owner of this, billionaire owner of this Jurassic World park, that he perfectly expected eventually that, a dinosaur would escape. It would get out of their control. He anticipated this. It's nothing to worry about. And yet there is no security force on this island that's actually equipped with weaponry or heavy weaponry or any kind of weaponry. They're equipped with basically stun guns of different types. And yeah, that's supposed to be the fail-safe for when a gigantic dinosaur escapes its corral. You're supposed to just use stun guns. It's completely stupid, and it's like, for some billionaire that thought he had this all planned out, he really didn't, and the plot needs it to be stupid like that so that once again the dinosaurs can escape and wreak havoc. And it's just got every plot hole you can imagine that's put into this to make sure that happens. Everybody's incompetent all the way down the line. In fact, the billionaire that owns this island, he's like some kind of Indian billionaire. It doesn't say what kind of industry made him rich, and he seems completely idiotic. His intelligence is definitely too low to have made any money in any kind of business. He's also an amateur helicopter pilot that's not very good at being a pilot either, and he gets himself killed by proving that he can fly a helicopter when he doesn't even have a pilot's license yet. There's just so much ridiculous stuff in this movie. And I have to admit, when the billionaire owner of Jurassic World died crashing his helicopter into an arboretum full of pterodactyls, I actually laughed out loud, and I was so happy. That made me so happy to watch him die in a ball of flames, because I wanted every character in this to do the same, because that's how dumb and unlikable they were. But let's move on. 3 stars, December 25, 2019, was a nice movie, and I really liked that most of my favorite dinosaurs were there. Ooh, wow, big deal. The action never seemed to end, and there were 1 or 2 thrill parts that were added in this movie. Only 1 or 2, wow. Okay, I would definitely recommend this movie for those that are dinosaur fans, but not for those that don't like 250-million-year-old fossils fighting on a huge screen. Yeah, I can't say that I was the biggest fan of the original Jurassic Park movie. I'm not like obsessed with dinosaurs. I don't think they're that big of a deal. But I'll have to admit that the first Jurassic Park movie, it had a story that worked. It was more emotionally impactful. The narrative was more believable. The characters characters were better characterized. It had the right amounts of humor and the right amounts of action, the right amounts of suspense. This one is a complete hollow shell. It's a very big budget hollow shell corporate monument to greed copy of the original Jurassic Park. It's completely pathetic. Yeah, the CGI is better, but the original didn't need perfect CGI to be convincing. This one has like really nice CGI effects on its dinosaurs, but fails in every other way this thing fails. And this thing, I mean, you can say the first movie, the Michael Crichton book inspired very first film, it had some plot holes. Sure, of course it would have to have some, but this thing's just full of Swiss cheese. It's really bad. It's like all they cared about were the CGI dinosaurs, and everything else could just go to hell as far as the production of this was concerned. All they cared about were those damn CGI dinosaurs, of which there are plenty, but there's really nothing new. I mean, we've seen all these dinosaurs do these things before with less competent CGI, and it's not any more thrilling just because they look a little bit more lifelike. And, you know, when this movie ages 10 years from now, these dinosaurs won't appear lifelike at all, even if some audiences thought they did today or a few years ago in 2015, because that's the way CGI is. It's very much like cartoons. It's a very sophisticated cartoon style, and it's certainly not real, and it will age badly like all CGI does. And this movie, I expect it to fall lower and lower in people's opinions as the time passes. But for now, right out the gate, on my first watch of this, this is completely rotten. It's just a monument to corporate greed, and by that I also mean it's got extreme levels of product placement all throughout. It's got some illogical stuff thrown in just for the sake of having product placement. You've got Mercedes, Jeep, you've got colas, you've got wow, I've got a whole list that I'll go through later, but it's really bad on the product placement. It's just corporate greed all the way down, corporate greed, and very, very shallow. Nothing in this thing is believable or emotional. There's no theme at the end of this. It leaves you basically feeling empty, like you drank a 20-liter bottle of Mountain Dew and then you just peed it all out and flushed the toilet afterwards. And that's about all this movie leaves you with. It feels very empty and pointless. Let's move down. I'm not going to entertain these 4-star reviews. I think they're worthless reviews. You know, just dinosaur fanboys, or they're 9 years old, because you'd have to be some kind of elementary school age kid to think that this is fantastic filmmaking. It's complete nonsense. There's nothing here. Half a star, October 19, 2019. This movie ruined the greatest movie of all time, and I hate it passionately. Yeah, I'm in that camp. I agree with that statement, and I'm in that camp. I mean, like I said, I'm not the greatest fanboy of the first movie. I thought it was a good movie, but I'm not a, you know, obsessed fan of it. I'm not going to watch it 3 more times. But this movie's just a complete shallow copy of the original in every way. Let's go through my list. You know, I'm kind of wondering why, first off, the logic of the plot of this movie. I'm wondering why the billionaire that owns this Jurassic World, why he even bothered to stick with dinosaurs and call it a theme park. It's shown that basically the public's tired of dinosaurs, so he has to create ever more weird dinosaur creations to keep people interested. That's what the movie tells you at more than one point. Now, if that's the case, why not just call it Monster Park and create like genetic monsters of different types and put human hybrids in there? I mean, because that's where it's going. I mean, you go further down that road. That's why the whole premise of this is just ridiculous to start with, because once dinosaurs aren't really a big deal to the public anymore, yeah, what are you going to have to do to convince people to come see your ridiculously expensive theme park? You're going to have to do even more wackier and wackier genetic abominations on this island, and eventually it will bite you in the ass, or it'll become too expensive. And that's why another reason why the whole premise of this fails. Just the premise of how this island is operated would be so expensive that I don't care if you're charging $1,000 a ticket to kids to come into this thing on cruise ships and their family, extended families. It wouldn't be enough to pay the bills on this thing. And, you know, the movie kind of hand waves that away at the beginning by making the billionaire kind of like nonchalantly dismissing all financial information. He's got people telling him financial things. In fact, it's Bryce Dallas Howard's character that is, trying to tell him financial information about the operation of this park, and he just hand waves it away and says, it doesn't matter. I only care about how it makes me feel and how the dinosaurs actually feel in the park. It's completely ridiculous, as though a billion-dollar businessman would not care about financials and would just be hand waving it all away like he doesn't care if he's taking a loss. It makes absolute shit sense. The whole premise is bad from the beginning, but let's move on. I'm going to jump right to the next page because I am not going to entertain these 5 and 4-star reviews. It's offensive for me to do so. So let's stick with this half a star review from September 19. Lots of CGI and special effects doesn't make a good movie. Here's the proof. Yep. Half a star, September 14. Oh dear, annoying characters, predictable plot, clunky CGI, waste of time. Yeah, waste of time, definitely. It wasn't a waste of my time because I wanted to see if this thing, how this came out. Because I'm like 3 years late to the party, or 4 years late to the party, I suppose. And I haven't seen the sequel to this one yet, and I will get to it, I promise you. But on my first watching of this a few hours ago, didn't take long, maybe about 10 minutes before I realized what my opinion of this was going to be, because the bad logic is there right from the beginning, and the unlikable characters are there right from the beginning. You've got, well, listen to this. Bryce Dallas Howard's character actually, she actually makes a little speech about about the evils and shallowness of product placement in their theme park while she's doing product placement. So the movie is actually taking a dump on the actual business practice of Hollywood movies of doing product placement while they're doing product placement at the same time. That's how ridiculous it is. It's not funny. It's just completely ironic and shameless at the same time. And it makes Bryce Dallas Howard's character even more unlikable and incompetent sounding than she had before. She made a riff about product placement while doing the product placement. I've never seen a movie do that. Not in a serious movie. I've seen a comedy do that where they make fun of product placement while doing it at the same time. This one's actually not doing it in a comical way. It's actually giving you the product placement while, preaching about the evils of that, pretty much. I just shake my head because this isn't a comedy. And, on that line of thinking, I'll let you know that there aren't one-liners in this. You know how Chris Pratt would have one-liners in the MCU, in the Guardians of the Galaxy, and in Infinity War, etc. He doesn't do any of that, and that's why he feels so wooden and just shallow and pointless here, because this movie was the type of a movie that you could have had one-liners. He could have done some of that, but no, there's no attempt at that. Whoever wrote the screenplay didn't write this with any kind of one-liner comedy like that. None of the characters do that kind of stuff, and it also makes this just really flat. There's no attempt at humor in this. The first movie, the first Jurassic Park #1, if you will, it had a lot of little humorous parts that worked very effectively. This one doesn't. It tries to play it straight all the way through, and I don't know why, because it had, Star-Lord in it, so why didn't it take advantage of Chris Pratt? It didn't. It just, could have replaced Chris Pratt with any other generic person as this very shallow action hero, and it was very flat. And that's why I say I don't even know why Chris Pratt was in this. I mean, I know why he would want to be in it, because he would get paid, but I don't know why he was chosen to be in this, because they didn't take advantage of his charm or humor or anything like any other movie would have. It's a complete fail. Let's go back to my list again, because my list is quite extensive. Yeah, the Dino Wranglers. I call them Dino Wranglers. Chris Pratt is the he's kind of the boss of these dino wranglers. They are training velociraptors like they would train, I don't know, dogs, for example, to be hunting dogs. It's not really clear what the purpose of this or who's put them up to this, but Chris Pratt is the leader of the Dino Wranglers, so to speak. And, the movie needs them to be incompetent. It doesn't have Chris Pratt be incompetent, but it has to have, his newer sidekick Dino Wranglers become incompetent so that they can fall into the pen with the dinosaurs and he can prove how brave he is in rescuing them. It's very cliched and stupid and illogical, and almost everybody except Chris Pratt is shown to be incompetent so that the dinosaurs can eventually escape, because the plot needs them to escape. And that's the other reason why this is a fail, because you already know that the dinosaurs have to escape, or otherwise you don't have a movie. You know that going into this as an audience member, whether it's in 2015 or it's today. So why the movie didn't try to do anything new or special or take that in a different direction, it's a complete fail, because it takes all the magic out of it. The first movie had magic because you weren't really expecting how the dinosaurs would escape. And in this one, there's nothing new about it. You already know what has to happen, and it happens just like it has to, through a lot of just straight up incompetence. And let's move on. Half a star. Oh dear, annoying characters, predictable plot, clunky CGI, waste of time. I think I might have read that before, but it bears repeating. Let's move down. 2.5 stars, September 10th. This movie could have been better. It didn't feel like a Jurassic Park film, but more like a dinosaur film with the same premise as Jurassic Park. Yeah, it was like a very hollow copy of Jurassic Park. It actually featured the original base from Jurassic Park, the original control room that just happened to be abandoned and still full of all its gear and everything, just sitting out there in the jungle, and nobody had ever touched it. Despite all this other stuff being renovated on the island, they just chose to leave the original Jurassic Park control room from the first movie just completely intact, just sitting out there with the equipment in it and vehicles and everything. No logic to that, except as number one, a callback, a very shallow callback to the original Jurassic Park for people my age perhaps, which failed. And then number two, it had to be there for a plot convenience so that these kid characters, when they later needed some equipment and a vehicle, they could find one in this old base to procure and repair for themselves. And that's completely stupid and another plot hole, but I'll get into that later. There's so many things wrong with this. I'm just going to move down here. We're going to look at this 3-star review from August 19th, 2019. Are you really going to tell me that there are dinosaurs that side with humans now? Are you really going to try and tell me the idea that some dinosaurs have been domesticated over the span of the past 20-something years? This movie is a definite eat soup from me. Yeah, there is a premise going on in this that Chris Pratt and his dinosaur wranglers, they've managed to figure out how to domesticate velociraptors pretty much, or while they're in the process of completely domesticating them. And another group of people, a villain character or two in this movie, they want to do the same thing, but they want to weaponize the dinosaurs, and they make allusions to, imagine what we could have done at Tora Bora if we had had dinosaurs or velociraptors to send against bin Laden's forces. Yeah, like we don't already have weaponry that's far more effective than dinosaurs. The U.S. military is not really using attack dogs in place of heavy weaponry, and we're not parachuting Arctic wolves into combat situations. It's the same kind of logic. Why would we want to use dinosaurs? We have weapons that can do all this, and they operate as we tell them to do. We don't have to worry about them going out of control. The whole thing is just stupid, but the villains are very stupid in this too. They're very shallow villains. Every character in this is so shallow. You don't know their motivations other than just maybe greed, and you don't know the motivations of the protagonists except maybe just to go through the motions to pretend like they're heroes. None of this makes any sense. They're all cardboard characters, villains and heroes alike, and the dinosaurs dinosaurs. Well, the dinosaurs are kind of the same way. There is a particular dinosaur called Blue, who has, I guess, been the most domesticated by Chris Pratt's character, and he kind of saves the day at the end in a way, and is like a trained puppy type of velociraptor in a way. Um, it doesn't work. I'm sorry. It's completely stupid. And yeah, this reviewer is onto something here. The idea that you're going to have dinosaurs, these creatures from millions of years ago, they're just going to be domesticated by some guy resembling Chris Pratt because he knows how to wrangle them. I mean, come on now. Let's move on. 1.5 star, August 13th. This film is a sorry excuse for a reboot that doesn't even attempt to do the original film justice, and is still somehow better than its sequel, Fallen Kingdom, that came out 3 years later. Yeah, we'll get to Fallen Kingdom one of these days. I heard that even the dinosaur fans couldn't excuse that one, but that's a topic for a future episode of Rotten Reviews. This is kind of like a reboot, but not really, because it is shown that the original events of the first Jurassic Park movie happened as portrayed in that movie. It's just that it's kind of saying that the next two, Jurassic Park 2 and 3, didn't happen. So it's not really a reboot. It's just kind of inserting itself right after the first Jurassic Park, but putting it like 20 years in the future or so. So I wouldn't call it a reboot. It's just a continuation, getting rid of two of the sequels. 1 star, August 3rd, 2019. Really dull with some terrible acting and pedestrian script and plot. Irfan Khan particularly wooden and dull. Bryce Dallas Howard's acting unconvincing too. Dinosaurs somehow look less convincing than the original. Perhaps we expect more nowadays. Yeah, I was going to mention that too, but I wasn't sure because it's been so long since I've seen the original. It appeared that although the CGI is better on these dinosaurs, that they actually look a little less convincing than the ones from Jurassic Park, the first movie. And I think the real reason for that doesn't have to do with the visual effects, but it has to do with the fact that they just put these dinosaurs front and center too much, and they kind of copy paste a lot of them into the scene, and it doesn't look quite real. There's too many dinosaurs at one time doing things within the frame of, within the audience's view. And the first movie, it had a lot of the dinosaurs kind of, particularly the T-Rex, he wasn't all the way in frame, and he was kind of a more suspenseful reveal of a monster, if you will. And this one, they're out in the daylight, like almost copy-pasted by the dozens out in the brilliant daylight. And it doesn't feel as convincing as the first one, despite the actual better, what you would think would be better CGI. But that wasn't actually a nitpick of mine. That's probably something that could be a matter of taste. But I do have on my list some other big problems. Yeah, this is a Disney type park, like Disney World on an island, and it's made for the kids. The movie makes a point of showing us that it's designed for kids and their family members, but largely to attract young kids. And it features attractions in which it shows farm animals, full-size farm animals being brutally eaten by the dinosaurs, and the kids are shown standing around watching that and cheering and clapping. And I'm sorry, but elementary school boys and girls would not cheer and clap and be all smiling and grinning while they watch an actual goat or a lamb get chomped and bitten and ripped into pieces by a dinosaur right in front of them on the other side of a glass wall. That's not how the kids would react, and the kids wouldn't find that a pleasant experience. Yet the movie wants us to believe that, yeah, little kids love this type of stuff. Really? Excuse me, really? The last time I checked, Disney World and Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm and Universal Studios don't actually feature their animatronic beasts like ripping live animals apart. The kids aren't really looking for that type of thing, and there aren't too many sane, level-headed adults that want a theme park like that either. But in this movie, it's all supposed to be taken serious, that's what the kids love. That's what the families coming off the cruise ships would enjoy, watching full-size farm animals get slaughtered by dinosaurs. So yeah, when you go to the zoo, You also don't see that. You don't see, you see some animal feeding at the zoo. You'll see zookeepers throw some raw meat to a tiger in the zoo, sure, and they'll do that in view of the public, but they don't feed actual goats to tigers in front of the public at the zoo. No zoo does this. No zoo would try to do this, and because zoos are for the family, right? And this theme park, this Jurassic World, is completely all about the family, but a lot of the stuff going on, even the sea life, the gigantic prehistoric whale creature that they have, they're feeding it with great white sharks from a crane, and it's done like SeaWorld style in front of all the smiling kitties. The smiling kitties wouldn't find that very entertaining. They would be horrified, and it looks like a monster show, but it shows the kids like grinning and smiling at the monster show. I don't know how this is realistic at all. It's just not believable. It's stupid. Um, 2 stars, July 29, 2019. In my opinion, after the first Jurassic Park, all the others were the same. Even this movie, there is a big dinosaur running away, and the hero on duty has to save everyone. Yeah, such a shallow hero, too. Just a cardboard cutout Chris Pratt. Very generic, not even funny, not even good dialogue. He's just got to save the day, and you see him riding a motorcycle against a green screen, obviously riding it in the studio on a, not even moving at all, while CGI velociraptors run around him, and you can tell it's on a green screen because the motorcycle isn't even actually vibrating over the terrain. It's really stupid, and there's long, drawn-out stretches of stuff like that that don't look real or convincing at all. Unless you're like 8 years old, then it probably would be believable to you, but even a teenager wouldn't find that entertaining or convincing. And it's just sad because there's a whole lot of money put into that kind of stuff and it doesn't look believable at all. But right off my list here, um, yeah, there's a joke about how the British invented nannies. Like, there's a character, Bryce Dallas Howard's character is like the aunt of these kids that the mom has sent off in her care. She's proved that she's just way too busy with her duties at the park to pay attention to her nephews. So she pawns them off on her British accented assistant. And then when the mom complains over a Skype call or whatever, she says, "Oh, don't worry about it. My assistant is British and the British invented nannies, so they'll be fine." It's like almost a slight against British culture, and it's kind of, I guess it's supposed to be funny, but it's just stupid. And then later on, when there's a scene in which like dozens and dozens of pterodactyls attack crowds of people out in the open, and nobody gets a scratch. No, not one tourist gets a scratch from all these pterodactyls attacking people, but except one character, and that's the British assistant who had to play the part of a nanny at one part. She is like just brutally killed by a combination of pterodactyls teaming up with sea life, if you will. They chomp her to bits, and I don't know what the movie's trying to say. Are they trying to say that they don't like British nannies? I mean, there's definitely a message there. I'm just kind of puzzled as to what the message is, but it's definitely somebody in the production of this has a problem with British nannies for some reason. Um, don't know why, it's just weird. 1.5 stars, July 16, 2019. Shit, complete overrated shit. Yes, that's why I'm here. I don't know why the audience score is so high. I'm guessing, like I said, it's the Transformers effect. People just want to see explosions, if you will, and they'll just lap this stuff up, but the rest of it is just complete shit. From my handy dandy notes here, here's a plot problem here. Why does the billionaire super smart, he's not really super smart, there's your clue. Why does this billionaire owner of this Jurassic World park, why does he want the dinosaurs to be even more scarier for the kids? He's definitely, in his dialogue, he said that he wants to attract kids to his park, and he wants the dinosaurs to be very comfortable in his park and to have good experiences too and enjoy their lives in his park. But then on the same, at the same time, he wants to genetically engineer scarier, more monstrous versions of the dinosaurs. It doesn't make any sense. It's another plot problem. And the movie takes it all serious. It puts these things together that don't belong together in the same character, and you're just supposed to not notice the problem there. Um, yeah, there's a big problem with trackers. You know, all the dinosaurs, they have tracker devices implanted into them, and there's a few plot holes involving this. First of all, the whole thing that starts the escape of the dinosaurs is one of the dinosaurs has been bred to be a little bit too smart and kind of fakes out the its wardens, that it kind of fakes out the controllers that it has escaped, so that they'll actually open the pen up to come in and investigate, but it hasn't really escaped. Well, that's only possible because for some reason, even though it has a tracker implanted into it, the people in the control center that monitor the dinosaur trackers, they're just incompetent. Everybody's incompetent. They just kind of conveniently forget about the dinosaur tracker when the dinosaur needs them to. And then later on, somehow there's another plot hole with these trackers where somehow this dinosaur that's never been out of its pen or seen the outside world, it's always been within these giant concrete walls its whole life. When it gets out, the first thing it does is like rip out or claw out. The movie says it clawed out its tracker and just left it on the ground. It clawed it out and then left this tracker on the ground. Well, how would it know what a tracker was? How would it know how trackers operate? And how would it know it had a tracker inside of it? Well, you know, that's nice because Chris Pratt's character comes along with a handy line of dialogue meant to get rid of this as a plot hole and says, well, oh, it remembered where the tracker was when it was implanted. Really? So there's another plot problem here. Why would these smart wardens of all these dinosaurs at this park decide to implant the trackers when the dinosaurs were not only conscious and could tell where the tracker was being put into it, but also in a place in their body which the dinosaur would be capable of digging the tracker out when it wanted to? There's just like 3 or 4 plot holes right to do with these trackers. And these trackers, they conveniently start working when the plot needs them to, and they stop working when the plot needs them to, despite they should be working the entire time. And in addition to that, Bryce Dallas Howard's character, when she discovers that this, or she thinks that this super smart Tyrannosaurus Rex mutant dinosaur has escaped from its holding pen, instead of just radioing in or opening her cell phone and calling control and telling them that the dinosaur has escaped, which they should already know since there's a tracker in it, right? They should know whether it has really escaped or not. But that's not the problem. I already discussed that problem. The new problem now is instead of just flipping open her phone and telling the control center that, hey, where's the dinosaur? It escaped. Nope. She doesn't do that. Instead, she decides that the smart thing to do is to get into her car, her vehicle, and barrel off down the road. And then after she's well down the road away from where the dinosaur is and its pen, then she decides to open up her phone or her radio and try to reach control. Where is she going? And why does she need to be driving down the road for a while to start to message or try to reach the control center? Oh, that's right. That needs to happen because she can't be there when it actually breaks out and attacks all the guards and whatnot around there because she would be killed too. The plot needs her to be elsewhere. And it's stuff like this in this movie that an 8-year-old, a 9-year-old would just find this acceptable, but an adult, even a teenager, it just comes across as really stupid and illogical. But let's move on. We'll get to some more stuff on my list, but let's move down, and we're just going to skip these 4 and 5-star reviews. We're going to go right through those and right through another page of some more until we get to this 3-star review from June 20, 2019. Okay, but it's still a B movie. Yeah, it is a B movie. It has B movie plot, B movie dialogue, B movie action, B movie everything, basically. The only thing that's not B movie level is the actual visual effects and the cinematography, perhaps. This is definitely not B movie. This is big budget Hollywood production level. But basically, this is a B movie. This is like what would happen if you took something that should have been made as a B movie, but then gave it like a $300 million budget or somewhere around there. Yeah, you would get this movie because this is, yeah, it's basically a B movie. Here's one, 3 stars from May 4th, 2019. This is a decent science fiction flick, but its biggest problem, along with stupid plot devices like weaponizing raptors for the military, is that it doesn't feel like Jurassic Park. Everything from the holograms to the gyrospheres to the very bright colors in this film make it feel more like a reboot of the franchise. And if you wanted to do a reboot, fine, but calling this a sequel to the original 93 film is a bit hard for me to imagine. At least with the new Star Wars films, there's an aesthetic that feels, yeah, they didn't get the aesthetic right. Again, this is just a continuation of the original 93 movie, not a reboot, but this reviewer brings up a good point that wasn't really on my list because it's the least of the movie's real serious problems, is that the aesthetic of it, it doesn't look like Jurassic Park at all. It actually looks more like something out of when you see these big vistas of the entire park from a distance, and you see like the hotel buildings and everything going on in the park, and there's a pyramid like area, and there's like water attraction areas. When you see it all from a bigger viewpoint and you see everything that's there, it doesn't look like Jurassic Park. Like, it doesn't feel like the original film at all. It feels like you're looking at something from, I don't know, it's hard to describe, something like Black Panther or a Marvel movie. It feels like that. It feels like one of these science fiction, futuristic comic book settings that we've seen in the Marvel films. It has that visual aesthetic to it, and so does the technology in the theme park. A lot of it feels like something that came out of, the set design for a Marvel movie, for an MCU film. And that's not bad stuff to have in a movie, but it doesn't fit with Jurassic Park, and it doesn't feel like Jurassic Park at all. It feels like an MCU movie, and there you go again with Chris Pratt, except in this MCU looking movie that's not an MCU movie, you also have Chris Pratt that has none of the charm he had in Guardians of the Galaxy, so it's a complete fail there too. But yeah, I'll agree with that. This looks a lot more visually like an MCU film than something that would be called Jurassic Park for sure. Half a star, May 3rd, 2019. Foolish, this movie is quite unrealistic. They're trying to tell me that they were able to create dinosaurs from DNA samples they found from a mosquito when dinosaurs did not even exist in the first place. How can you make so many dinosaurs from one blood? Also, what happened to the two pterodactyls in the movie? Too many plot holes and facts are far from straight. Yeah, well, this reviewer is talking about something that's a problem with the original Jurassic Park as well. But you can hand wave, with fantasy, with science fiction, you're allowed to have one crazy, outlandish premise going on, and that would be the fact that you can just use DNA from amber to recreate dinosaurs. That's what the first movie did too. That's not the problem here. That's not the problem at all. The problem is all the plot holes and the wooden characters, and the aesthetic doesn't match. And, there are other plot holes, like this reviewer talks about two pterodactyls that are missing. Yeah, there are. There were like two big pterodactyls and then a whole bunch of smaller ones, and the smaller ones are kind of tranquilized away. It doesn't show them being killed, but it's assumed that they were tranquilized. But then there's two big pterodactyls that escaped from their holding thing, their atrium or whatever, and yeah, they just kind of disappear conveniently. You don't know what happened to them. It's a plot hole. There's so many plot holes in this film. 1 star, April 24th, 2019. Fighting raptors that are used by the military. Really? What was the writer thinking? Yeah, they needed villains to have some kind of motivation, and the villains were motivated to sell versions of the dinosaurs as weapons, and I guess that's what the second film has done as well. Now, I haven't seen the second film, but I'm guessing it continues on with that plot thread about wanting to weaponize dinosaurs. But let's move on. 3 stars, April 19. Engaging for the most part with decent set pieces and some popcorn fun and thrills. Jurassic Park is worth a watch for the fans of the original, but it still can be a notch higher for today's time period. I'll disagree with that. If you're a fan of um, the original was an engaging movie, and the book was quite popular even before the movie, the Michael Crichton book. However, if you're a fan of either one of those, you'll find this just a corporate, soulless, copied cash grab. It's completely empty. Now, if you're a fan of just seeing CGI dinosaurs, then this is right up your alley. but not if you're actually looking for a decent film. I'm sorry, this is very offensive to somebody that enjoyed the first one as an actually good film. This fails in almost every regard except for the high budget. Let's take a look at other plot problems. Yeah, uh, you know, the boss, the Indian billionaire boss, he tells everybody in the control room, hey, calm down. I know this gigantic dinosaur, the super smart dinosaur, has managed to escape, but I expected this. This was bound to happen at some point. So I'm going to send out like a team of guys with tranquilizer guns. Oh, okay. Well, what can you imagine would happen? A team of guys with tranquilizer guns and stun guns go out to fight some gigantic T-Rex like thing. Yeah, that's going to go real well. But the movie expects you to believe that was supposed to be serious security for these dinosaurs. They're not even carrying guns. Later, much later in the film, one or two of these security henchman type characters actually are shown firing a shotgun, maybe a double barrel shotgun. Even a double barrel shotgun, it shows up really late. Even if they all had shotguns, what good would that be against a gigantic T-Rex? I mean, it's really ridiculous. And there are other problems, like when they actually do use actual, like there's a minigun at one point that's used against this T-Rex like dinosaur, and of course it doesn't do anything to it. It's almost like the dinosaur has armored skin. It just pisses him off. I'm sorry, but you know, they hunt elephants with just regular rifles. You know that, right? I guess the people that made this didn't know that, because a large animal is still made of flesh and bone. If you put a minigun up against a large animal, I don't care if it's the size of a blue whale, it's going to get messed up real bad. It's not going to live long when a minigun's firing on it. But in this movie, when they do engage it with the only military weapon they happen to pull out of the closet, yeah, it just shrugs off the minigun because the plot needs it to, you know, and it's just completely stupid. 3 stars, a decent reminiscence of the first Jurassic Park, but with better visuals. The pioneering aspect of the franchise is gone, though, making it just a standard blockbuster. I wouldn't even call this a blockbuster. It's a blockbuster in budget only. The only thing it busted was like my suspension of disbelief because I just couldn't get into this thing. Definitely just a 1-star movie. Don't you give this 3 stars, you're way too kind, or you're under the age of 10, then I can forgive you. Let's see, what else do I have? Plot problems. Yep, a dinosaur that's never been out of its pen. It knows all about trackers and how they work, and that it needs to get this tracker out as soon as possible. Yep. Let's see. Went through other stuff on the trackers. The security teams have no lethal weapons available. Yep. Oh, yes. There's a kind of futuristic, like gyroscopic ride that it's shown that kids are allowed to ride this on their own, like ride it around in the middle of fields full of giant dinosaurs. No adult supervision of any kind, and it said that this is bulletproof and it's fail-safe and all this, but it's quickly shown that the kids are able to like roll this thing right out an open gate and get themselves into trouble. No adult supervision. Also, no trackers on any of these amusement park rides that are rolling around out in the countryside. Like I said, the trackers just conveniently don't exist or don't work when the plot needs them not to be there. And so when the kids go missing in this, this rolling gyroscopic ride, of course, there's no tracker on it, so they can't find the kids. But of course, in the real world, we know that there would be trackers on all these things. And in the real world, you wouldn't be allowing minors to ride these things unsupervised. It makes no damn sense, much less ride these things along dangerous creatures. Please. Anybody that's been to Disney World or Disneyland or any other theme park ride knows that there's no little kids allowed to ride unsupervised, and there are no rides that you're able to pilot on your own that aren't controlled by some track system or some way to keep you in check. You're not just allowed to ride things all over every place on your own. It doesn't make any sense. The whole thing's nonsense. Another plot problem, yeah, the ride operators. all this money put into all these futuristic rides that kids are allowed to ride unsupervised, and the movie actually, I guess it's trying to be funny by showing that the operators of these rides are also pretty much kids, and they're incompetent, and they don't care about what they're doing, and they're bored, and they don't even know the first thing about their own rides or what to do in an emergency. They're incompetent and just bored to be there. I guess they're not paid enough or whatever. And I don't know if the movie was trying to make that as a joke about people that operate, people that staff theme parks, but they made it look like people that work in theme parks are just like miserable and they don't want to be there and they're incompetent. And they're underage too. Completely stupid. Let's see. Oh, yes, the kids, even though, we know the maximum speed a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old could run, and we certainly can imagine the maximum speed that like a 12-year-old or younger could run, they can somehow outrun giant dinosaurs when they really have to. They can outsprint them just long enough to escape when the plot needs them to. And so, of course, can Chris Pratt's character and his henchmen. They can conveniently outrun dinosaurs when they need to, too. But when some of the minor henchmen need to get munched up, they can't outrun them. Chris Pratt can and the kids can, but when it's a minor character, it's almost as bad as an episode of Star Trek with the red shirt characters. The red shirt characters always die, and the henchmen, they can never outrun those dinosaurs, but everybody else can, even the little kids. That's why stuff like that just makes movies like this completely dumb. Let's see, another plot problem. Yeah, every radio and cell phone system in this theme park, despite the budget and all the technology going on, when the plot needs it, there's just too much static on the radio, or the cell phone just conveniently doesn't have service, or the messages are all garbled up with static, even on the cell phones, when the plot needs it to be like that. Otherwise, the technology works just fine. Even doing that one time in a movie is bad, but this movie does it multiple times just to make the plot work. You would think with the radio system being so bad and the cell phone service so bad on this island, they should just fire all the telecom people and start over. But anyway, the plot needs it to be like that for the plot to work. Yeah, why, there's a okay, more product placement. Just so you know, there's a Jeep. There are a couple of Jeeps that are sitting in the old 1993 control room on the island. They're just sitting there waiting to be used, and I'll tell you, they are 1992 Jeep Wranglers. I didn't write down the actual special edition that it is because the movie has to mention it. The movie actually makes a point on telling you that this is a 1992 Jeep Wrangler of such and such edition, and the kids like magically restore this 1992. This Jeep's been sitting there since 93. And the kids, within like about 5 minutes, just by pulling a battery off a shelf somewhere, they're able. That battery's also been sitting there since 1993 on a shelf. They just swap the battery out, and this thing fires right up, and everything works. And this Jeep is. They put this Jeep into service, outrunning the T-Rex with no problem at all. But it's been sitting there for more than 20 years. Yeah, that's believable. And the gas works fine. And the battery that they pull off the shelf, the kid actually holds this battery up in front of the camera for like a good 10 seconds to show you the big Kawasaki label on the side of the battery. And the battery is not a battery from 1993. It is clearly a modern Kawasaki battery of some type. It also doesn't work because it's obviously not a battery from 93, and it's brand new Kawasaki battery pulled off a shelf that's been sitting there for 20 years out in the middle of the jungle, exposed to the elements, and the kid holds it up to the camera for like a solid 10 seconds, and then they put it into the Jeep. They don't show them putting it into the Jeep, but they kind of like clip to them starting the Jeep now and just pulling out of there, and the Jeep's fully functional after sitting there for 22 years out in the jungle. Wow, wow, wow. Product placement up the wazoo, plus plot holes, all in the same scene. Let's see. Yeah, we have like, there's the Indian boss. He just needs to fly the helicopter on the mission against the T-Rex. When they get a minigun, they install a minigun into the opened bay of this helicopter, and then the billionaire Indian boss, he decides he tells his pilots to basically get bent, the experienced pilots, and just decides. Now remember, he doesn't even have a pilot's license because he's not very good at flying a helicopter. The movie actually tells you and shows you both of these things, and yet he goes ahead and gets rid of the pilot and decides to pilot the helicopter on this mission against the T-Rex, and of course he gets killed, and that's when I laughed out loud when he died because he deserved it, and the movie is just pathetic for doing that. Yeah, there's an air raid siren, like an old-fashioned air raid siren that you would see in a World War II movie. You know, when enemy bombers are coming close to the base, you would get this long droning air raid siren. And as soon as the pterodactyls escape from their aviary, and they decide to attack all the tourists in the theme park. There's just air raid sirens that sound from everywhere. Like, I'm not sure what activated those sirens. I guess they're programmed to respond to pterodactyls because, like, the air raid sirens sound, and then magically all the tourists seem to know what the air raid sirens mean, and they know that the pterodactyls are coming, and they start cowering from the pterodactyls. Wow, I didn't know because the movie doesn't show any kind of, training class that they're putting the tourists through to know that the air raid sirens mean that pterodactyls are approaching. It's completely stupid, and I would have laughed if they had done that a little bit differently, if this had been a parody, and it should have been because it would just came across as completely dumb. Let's go into some more rotten reviews before I get too far down my list. Yeah, 3 stars from March 10th, 2019. This did not do much for me, but I'm glad to see Chris Pratt getting work. In my opinion, he needs to stick to Guardians of the Galaxy because this didn't do him any favors. 1.5 stars, March 8th. A mess without scales. Pessimistic story. Characters that one desires that they were devoured by the most secondary dinosaur. The children deserve to be crushed by some herbivore's dinosaur, the most boring preferably. The worst without doubt are the Velociraptor dogs. Regrettable. With my friends, we laughed in the movie theater. To think that as a child he had nightmares about the T-Rex, and we are shown in this movie as a giant, clumsy, and idiotic hamster. Trash. The CGI is sad and mediocre. I have to agree with this reviewer. It sounds like a teenager that went to see this and he's really mad about it. Because, yeah, these characters are so unlikable. Within 10 minutes, you hate all of these characters and you're hoping they'll all be killed off. Chris Pratt's not unlikable. He's just boring and paper thin and just a cardboard cutout character. But every other character, including Bryce Dallas Howard, is so incompetent, unlikable, unsympathetic to kids. She's got every bad thing in her character working against her. I wanted to see her die before any of the dinosaurs ever escaped. That's how unlikable I found her to be. And it tries to make her into some kind of action hero later where it has to show her in one very contrived and unrealistic scene saving Chris Pratt from the pterodactyl attack. Completely stupid. But the movie had to have that to show her as a strong, powerful woman able to save Chris Pratt. That didn't work either, I'm afraid. 2 stars, February 21. I love Chris Pratt, but this movie was awful. Yeah, it didn't do him any favors at all. 2.5 stars, February 2. It's an improvement on Jurassic Park 3, but we all know that isn't saying much. Yet another apparent result of fan fiction becoming mainstream. I'd class this along with something like Star Trek Nemesis. Some good ideas, some good acting, but storyline and execution are appalling. Yeah, let's check my list again here. What do we have? Yeah, I think I mentioned it already. Chris Pratt riding a motorcycle through the jungle with velociraptors swarming around him, running alongside him like they're a team. And you can tell it's in front of a green screen because the motorcycle doesn't bounce or move at all. And it's just like he's pretending to ride it, and they filled in the CGI later. And then the worst part is you could kind of tell because of the length of it and the way it was shot that it was just set up to make some video game. And perhaps there's a scene like that that's in the video game. And I'm sure the video game came out for this movie. They always do, and they're always really bad. They suck. And it's definitely that they designed that part of the movie to promote a video game tie-in. There's no question about that. And I don't even need to see the video game, whatever crap game it was, to prove that. I'm quite certain of it. You can just tell by watching it. Yeah, bullets and RPGs will not penetrate the hide of a T-Rex. It is way too armored for that. Yeah, that's believable. I'm afraid not, because dinosaurs are made out of flesh and blood, just like you and me, just like an alligator, just like any lots of other creatures on Earth. And I don't recall any crocodiles being immune to rifle fire or to RPGs. But yep, the T-Rex is. Didn't get a scratch from that RPG. Um, Completely stupid. Let's see what else we have. Oh yeah, the velociraptors chasing after vehicles and whatnot, and the movie just on the fly adjusts their maximum speed to make the plot work. Sometimes they're way faster than the vehicles, sometimes they're just a little bit too slow, and then they speed up again, and then they're slow again. And the plot is just like almost like a video game where the AI in the plot is adjusting your enemy strength as you play to just keep them as viable enemies. And this film does that on the fly, and it's so damn obvious and stupid that you would have to be younger than 10 years old to not see what it's doing. No suspense at all. At no point during this film do you think that any of the main characters is ever going to get a scratch. No matter what situation they're put in, you know they're not. Not a single one of them, even though you'd like to see them get killed. I did. I wanted so badly to see Bryce Dallas Howard's character get chomped in half by a T-Rex, but all it gave us was her British assistant getting chomped in half. And you knew the whole way through that not one of these characters was going to get a scratch on them, and nobody ever did. They got sweaty and they got dirty, but that's all that happened to them throughout everything that was thrown at them. Yeah, at the end, there's lots of crying. The kids are reunited with their parents that showed up at the very end, and everybody's hugging and crying, and you see tears streaming down everybody's faces, and it feels like nothing. It feels like cardboard characters with fake tears streaming down their faces. It's completely pathetic, and even a 9-year-old wouldn't be crying in these fake emotional scenes. It's completely pathetic, and that's going to wrap up my list. And I'll just wrap up the page on here, and let's see what we have here. 3 stars, January 26, 2019. Sure, the movie is very dumb, but is a whole lot of fun. I disagree. I think it's only a whole lot of fun if you're under the age of 10. Otherwise, it's not. It's a whole lot of just, wow, this is dumb. 2.5 stars, January 24th. The definition of bland and mediocre theater junk. We're treading familiar ground with very little reward, besides profit for the studio. Why? Yeah, it's a cash grab, that's why. There's no reward to get out of this. There's no message or theme to get out of this. It's completely empty, soulless, corporate greed. It's just a cash grab. I'm just shocked that this has 72% on the tomato meter. Now, it's obviously not certified fresh, and I think that means that it has not maintained its fresh rating. At some point, it dropped into rotten and then went fresh again, even if for the smallest amount of time, and that will disqualify it from being certified fresh. So yeah, that tells you 72%, not exactly fresh, but they're not saying it's rotten either. 78% on the audience score. There's no, we see this in the Transformers movies. People just want this mindless type of action. And we see it with the current Star Wars movie. People are wondering why the current Star Wars movie is stuck at an 86% on the audience score. The Rise of Skywalker is, and it has been since the audience score was made public on Rotten Tomatoes. And there are a lot of conspiracy theories about that, but I'm just going to say, hey, people just like this mindless type of stuff. They just want explosions. They want to see ships in space exploding. They want to see lightsabers clashing together. And they don't care if the plot makes sense. They don't care if anything makes sense. They just want to see this visual nonsense, and that's what they need. And that's what this Jurassic Park, Jurassic World franchise has turned into. It's just a visual spectacle of just CGI dinosaurs in different ways and shapes, and just like it's becoming like worse than an MCU film. It looks like an MCU film. And I would expect that the next one from 2018 is going to be even worse for me to look at. And I'm sure that's It's coming, and I'm sure they're not going to stop there. Who knows? Maybe there'll be 10 more of these, and every couple of years we'll get another just completely corporate, soulless visual spectacle for hundreds of millions of dollars of its budget. And people will just continue to watch this nonsense and suck it up because they suck up the gruel. And, it wouldn't shock me if this goes on for another 10 years. Look what Transformers did. They just keep producing soulless movie after soulless movie, and they're worse and worse, and yet people keep buying the tickets to watch this stuff. And that's what's going on here. And I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.